Hello, welcome to MJR RPG. The following review is of the Japanese Call of Cthulhu scenario Black Eyeball, or Kuroi Medama, written by Uchiyama Yasujirou from the modern-day sourcebook and scenario collection Cthulhu 2020. As always, the first chunk of this review is largely spoiler-free, while the second half is full of spoilers, so I'll warn off any prospective players before that begins. Another note, Cthulhu 2020 is currently only available in Japanese and physically, though it can be ordered and shipped overseas from Amazon Japan. In short, Black Eyeball is a unique introductory scenario in the vein of the Gateways to Terror scenarios or A Cup of Horror by the same author, but with much less emphasis on combat and more on problem solving. Black Eyeball is the first of 6 scenarios in the Japanese modern-day sourcebook, Cthulhu 2020. It is written by Uchiyama Yasujirou, who has rapidly become my favorite active Call of Cthulhu author, with 2 of his scenarios also reviewed on this site, A Cup of Horror and 3 Request, with another on the way, no breaking off. And this scenario only strengthens that feeling. It fits a short session, with the text recommending 2 hours and a player count of 2 to 4, and my run did indeed take about 2 hours with a 4-player group. The scenario is set in a single location, a thrift store, and comes with a nice map of the small building. The text covers 6 pages, nicely laid out with plenty of box text and section divisions to make for comfortable reading, some fun black and white art pieces, also pretty spooky, stat blocks, and some of the same sort of simple flowcharts found in the Cthulhu 2020 and Bibliotech 13 scenarios, which I will always appreciate. I love any sort of visual representation of a scenario, whether it be a flowchart, timeline, relationship matrix, whatever. There are only 2 small little note handouts besides the map, though. Both of the current 7th edition Japanese scenario books, Cthulhu 2020 and Bibliotech 13, said that like 4 times, contain no pre-generated investigators, and only a handful have meaningful hooks to get player characters personally involved. This is by far my largest and really maybe only complaint that can be leveled against all of the 2 books' 19 scenarios, and Black Eyeball is no different. The only real hook is the investigators just so happen to be going to the second-hand store, which is a very, very, very tired hook that repeats across its sibling scenarios, with the investigators being in just the wrong place at the wrong time. If a group was thinking of stringing multiple scenarios into a campaign from these books, it would be awkward to the point of comical how often the investigators blunder into the mythos when just looking to buy a coffee, visit a museum, or just stop at a hot spring. In my run of Black Eyeball, I had one investigator be an associate of the thrift store's owner, who explicitly called them to offer a look and first sale on a new item, with the other investigators being friends or colleagues tagging along. Luckily, almost any investigator is suited to the scenario. Likewise, the era and setting could be changed without much issue. A few name and set dressing changes could easily have this be a classic 1920s Lovecraft Country scenario, if the keeper felt so inclined. I also think the puzzle mystery at the center of the scenario is versatile enough to be easily reusable in any other story across any setting, making Black Eyeball useful not just for a single gaming session, but as a resource to cannibalize for a keeper's personal use. The simple problem in a small location that requires freeform brainstorming and creativity from the players, all while their investigators are harried just enough to keep them on their toes and pushing ahead, is a reoccurring theme in Uchiyama scenarios, and has become my favorite type of one-shot session. Throw the players into a small place with an obvious problem, a handful of clues and resources to spark some ideas, some sort of threat to interrupt or push them ahead when needed, and a ticking clock, then leave the players to come up with their own solution. It worked well in Uchiyama's 3 Requests, and it works very well here too. It's also a pretty spooky scenario all around. Being a very short scenario, it's hard to talk more about it without giving too much away, so I'll sum it up by saying that Black Eyeball, along with Uchiyama's A Cup of Horror, are my 2 favorite short introductory scenarios for Call of Cthulhu now. They are skinnier than Chaosium's own Gateways to Terror scenarios in terms of keeper direction, handouts, and artwork, but their core mysteries allow for more varied and interesting role-playing and problem-solving from the players, new and old alike. Cthulhu 2020 is once again, unfortunately, only available in Japanese and in physical book form. Why does Kadokawa refuse to release PDFs of their books like any other game publisher in the world? Though you can order the book overseas from Amazon JP. If you do own the book, I'd be happy to share my English notes, just reach out to me. The following section is full of spoilers, so if you are wanting to play this someday or just don't want to know what it's about, please stop here. Black Eyeball's setup is very simple. The thrift store's owner, Yokuichi, came into possession of a spooky lamp. Not knowing what it was, he unveiled the spooky lamp. Unfortunately for Yokuichi, the spooky lamp held a spark of Cthulhu, or Cthulhu, whatever. And its radiance causes people's shadows to detach themselves and try to kill their previous owners to become truly free. Being shadows, though, the creatures lose all power in complete darkness, as light is required to have shadows. The investigators arrive in the early morning, just before the sun starts to rise, wandering into the store after Yokuichi had gone partially insane, painted over the windows, and then been attacked and knocked down by his shadow. The investigators have to figure out what is going on and come up with a way to extinguish the lamp before the sun rises, The investigators have to figure out what is going on and come up with a way to extinguish the lamp before the sun rises. Otherwise, Yokuichi's shadow will become powerful enough to kill him and become free. They have a very short time until daybreak, potentially limited to a real-world timer if the keeper feels like setting a clock and stressing out their players. They also need to operate in near darkness, as any light source like a flashlight or candle will lend strength to the shadow creature, allowing it to attack the investigators or kill Yokuichi. The lamp is locked in a safe. The investigators need to open it, but in a way that doesn't allow the lamp's glorious mythos-powered light from streaming out. Otherwise, they not only risk being bathed in its sanity-blasting brilliance, but creating more creatures as their own shadows detach. Discovering what is going on is probably the most difficult and dangerous part of the scenario, as at first all the investigators know is the building is dark and a shadowy something is prowling around them. If they turn on the lights, open a window, or call the police, they risk empowering the shadow immediately. Yokuichi can somewhat prevent that from some half-crazed warnings to not turn on the lights. Just to get things rolling, an idea roll or two can help the investigators put two and two together if they flash a light and the creature attacks, letting them understand more light is a bad idea. And from there, the meat of the scenario presents itself. The investigators need to understand what the source of the shadow creature is, then find out where it is, then come up with an idea how to extinguish it, and finally deal with the complications of the lamp turning out to hold the fire of a god in it. The initial investigation process is fairly simple thanks to the small location, and half an hour or so after entering the building and calming down after figuring out what the shadow creature is, they should be standing around by the vault thinking of what to do with it. And that's where the real fun is, as they try to think of a plan to extinguish the flame without too much light getting out. Then, once they've talked for most likely a very long time and are ready to enact whatever weird plan they'd come up with, they find the lamp is much stronger and decidedly brighter than expected. Unless they come up with a very good idea to completely block it from sight, one or more may be impacted by a hefty sand loss, further complicating the plan as they deal with involuntary reactions or outright bouts of madness. Then still need to break the lantern's case to get at the flame within. In my run, one of the investigators was driven indefinitely insane by the light and became obsessed with it. The player decided their investigator needed to touch the flame directly. The scenario text didn't account for this, so I went with it being like willingly accepting an attack by Cthulhu, meaning a whopping 6d6 damage resulting in a nice little pile of investigator-shaped ash. A more forgiving keeper could instead allow to be only 1d6 damage, as if using the spell Touch of Fire, or maybe cause a direct vision of Cthulhu, causing a 1d3, 1d20 sand loss, though if the investigator is already suffering a bout, they wouldn't take the loss. And that's really the whole scenario. It's very simple, but the few elements play off each other to make the puzzle more interesting and difficult to solve. A very tight design, neat mythos elements, a pretty creepy idea, make for a near-perfect one-shot for me. Again, Cthulhu 2020 is only available in Japanese and in physical form. While it would be very, very cool for Chaosium to someday license their license back into English someday, for now, if you do manage to get the book and you can't read it, I'd be happy to help you run it for your own group. Thank you for listening. As always, credit to Cryochamber for use of their album, Cthulhu. Until next time, have a good one.